And we are recording. All right, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of the Illinois Green Party. I'm your host, David Rych. We have two very special guests, Gary Ricci and George Moore. Gary is a very old friend of mine. The friend is old. He's not old. But I've known
old.
Gary since, what, 95?
96.
1995, I think we first met. 96, yeah. Okay. And George Moore. And Gary is the pastor of New Hope Church in Round Lake, Illinois. And is it Round Lake or Round Lake Park?
We're actually in Round Lake Heights.
Round Lake Heights.
There's
a fourth
Round
one.
Lake.
Yeah, the best of all the Round Lakes. Yeah,
best Round Lake out of 4.
Yeah. Okay. And George Moore is the. Tell me again, George, you're the pastor of what church?
It's a mission called Legacy Reentry Foundation, located in Waukegan.
Okay. And that's pretty much the reason why we're here. Is I wanted to talk to you about that because it's a fascinating, very important mission. Like we were talking before we started recording, I've known people that have been incarcerated. When they get out, they just have a real tough time acclimating back into society, mostly because our judicial system won't let them. So why don't you tell us about the mission and how it got started and your background and experience leading up to it?
Sure. Well, basically, we got started about 20 years ago because of my own personal experience of being a justice-impacted individual, needing assistance myself, coming out of jail, wanting help, needing resources. And when I found those resources for myself in 2015, just speeding things up a bit, my wife and I established Legacy Reentry Foundation, where we go back. And I always say to help people like me, I go back to get me. In other words,
right.
Anybody who's dealt with that kind of situation, similar to what we talked about before the show, we want to go get those kind of people, and we have the resources to do it now, thanks to the support that we're getting from Pastor Gary and New Hope and on our grants and our resources. We're able to do it. So basically, that's what we do. We're helping formerly incarcerated individuals to reintegrate back into society through resources like youth development, violence prevention, and of course, reentry.
Okay, and what does that look like in more detail? Like somebody comes to your door and says, "Hey, I need help." What happens?
Sure. So they first come to the door and they say, "Listen, I need assistance," and they go to the front desk and they meet what we call Chief of Staff Vanessa. And they ask for, a job, or they need housing, whatever resource they need. Vanessa has them sign in and connect to a case manager immediately. That case manager begins to assess that individual and then get them the resources they need. If we don't have it, we call ourselves a hub of resources. We're connected to people who do. And so we love partnerships. We partnered with Boys and Girls Club. We've partnered with NERCO, who does recovery. We've partnered with, of course, churches all the time to make sure that whatever we don't have, we get that person the resources that they need fairly quickly.
It sounds pretty vast. I mean, you have the people, the caseworkers, are they professional social workers? What happened? You're gone, Gary.
Sorry, I got a phone call.
We got a phone call. We didn't get the last part.
Sorry.
Yeah. All right, we're back again. Are these caseworkers like professional social workers? I mean, like what's the kind of the professional or legal underpinnings to these?
Yes, so they're glorified social workers. Yes, that's what they're professionals. They have a background in the work that they do, and they've got a heavy caseload. We've had 400 referrals last year, serving over 200 people. So we've had a heavy caseload, but the job is getting done. We're seeing, we saw recently, they just told me the stat, 60% increase in the services that we provide from last year. And so that's a lot. With the new grants that came in for us, we've shown the community that we're wise stewards of the resources that we're given. And so now we're being trusted with more.
That's great. That's great to see it's growing like that. Do you get any support from the state?
Yes. That's where we got our most recent grants from. And at first, it's the irony of it is that I wanted no part of the state or any government grants or anything like that because I thought they would control us. But it turned out to be quite the opposite. where all we're doing is being wise stewards of the resources. As long as you do what you say you're going to do in your narrative with your budget and your word, as long as you do that and meet the numbers that you said you were going to meet, more resources come, and that's what's happened for us. So I'm happy it didn't turn out the way I thought it would, and so we're continuing to do it.
That's great. Yeah, no, dealing with the government can usually be daunting and ominous, and for sure they're a rather formidable force in our society.
David, can I add something that I think they do really well that maybe doesn't come out in the stat?
Yeah.
One thing I noticed being around Legacy and even seeing some folks from here who have prison in their background is that there's this great sense of that's not your story. That your whole story isn't I was convicted of this thing or I spent time in jail. And there's something really beautiful about that of like, oh, this is a person that has this in their history, but it's not their whole story. It's not their future. It's not their value. It's not their worth. And I think especially George having that in his background and going, hey, look at what I'm doing now, right? Look at what's happened in me, how God's changed me and worked in my life. And that can happen in your life as well. And to have that, to be received as a person, not just someone who's getting services, but what Legacy makes you feel like you're part of the family. Wow. Whenever I'm only there, I've been there occasionally, and they treat me like a part of the family and received in that place. Do they call me mob boss, even though I'm a pastor and no longer involved with the mafia? Yes.
No longer.
Yes, we do. That is a true story.
That's true.
A mob boss that can actually cook very well.
That's right.
He is a good cook. He's Italian. Come on.
Bring it all in.
Yes.
But I do want to say, we talked about it, David, before we got on, is that it's when you get convicted of anything in this state or any state, in especially in America, it's a life sentence.
Yeah.
You know it. You
it's
talked
crazy.
About a friend that you just tried to help.
Yeah.
This guy out of jail. I mean, I have gotten pulled over. Here I am, whoever you think I am now, and yet I'm still treated like a person that did whatever 30 years ago. And
that's
so,
crazy.
So that's why you have the recidivism rate there so high, because once you get out, it's hard to stay out. So we're under that mantra, that family, you come to us, we treat you like family. We don't care what you did. We have a community closet. You go in there and you shop like it's there, get free clothes, whatever. We don't treat you like you're doing community service or that you're this criminal or that you have this background or this history that you haven't got expunged. We treat you like a person. And I think you would want to do that for yourself. Treat others as you want them to treat you. And so that is exactly how we're family.
Well, and everyone needs someone to believe in them and root for them and care about what happens to them. And that's part of what happens at Legacy. It's part of what's supposed to happen in churches. Something that we long to say, yeah, we're with you. We care about what happens to you. We believe in you. That just having other people around you that you're not on your own in this is a big deal. It's a big deal.
Yeah, that's huge. No, community support or social support, moral support is always very important. Everybody needs it. Excuse me. When you started Legacy, what sort of loopholes, or not loopholes, but what kind of rings did you have to go through in order to get it set up? I'm assuming it's a legally founded, established situation, right? What's so funny?
We were just talking about this at lunch.
Yeah, it's we started out broke, trying to help broke people. That's the best way I can say it.
So when you first started, you saw you can help people find jobs, right? That's one of your services, right?
Yeah, and we did that.
But
no, go ahead.
Well, I'm just wondering how that happens. In detail. Okay, somebody comes in and it's like, hey, I just got out of jail. I need a job really bad. Okay, so what do you do? Do you ask about his experience? Are you networking with different businesses directly to say, hey, this gentleman needs? Go ahead. So.
No, yes. So initially, my wife and I were their original case managers. It was just us. And what we would do is, and that's why, prayer is so important. We had some innovative ideals. And so what I did was I would talk to employers and, look at me. I'm not a threat to you. There's more people like me.
Right.
And they believe me. And we had several employers come in. We had a job here. We partnered with CLC College of Lake County, and I remember there's a slew of just people everywhere. Temporary agencies came in and just start hiring people and just start bringing them on. And my idea was just go get a whole bunch of temp agents, and then I started talking to employers later. But we started out with temp agencies, and then we had one would come in and sit in our office every Wednesday, and we hired. I remember we had 14 people come in, and 14 people were hired the next day working.
Wow.
Working. And so, I mean, yes, it's a temp agency. It wasn't, but that was how we started out, and that's how we were innovative. And then we got to the place where we said, I stopped talking to the middleman, supervisors and individuals like that, and I just started talking to employers. Maybe a guy at my church who owns a whole construction, owns trucking. I started talking to people who actually own businesses, and I found out that business owners are the best people to talk to. Not the middleman, not the supervisor, the business owner, because he needs employees. And he doesn't care about all that other goofy stuff that goes on in the back office. Like, look, I just need employees. If I could trust you, if you say they can show up on time and do the work, I don't care what they did.
Well, and if you get people like that who get in jobs now 10 years from now when they're running their own business, they're more likely to take the chance on someone. I have 2 guys in this church who own businesses who have prison in their background. And on a smaller scale, we do the same thing here. And I'll just go and say, hey, Steve, will you take a chance on this guy? And then when that guy builds up, he goes, yeah, someone took a chance on me. And hopefully some of the legacy of Legacy will be that there'll be hundreds of people that George can go, hey, they came through our program and now they think this way too.
That's it.
I love that. Yeah, it's effective in perpetuity. Like, I mean, it just keeps growing on itself. That's really great. Pay it forward kind of thing. That's awesome, and it's how it should be. Do you get any pushback? I mean, does anybody like, no, ex-con, no way,
You asked all the great questions. I'm telling you.
Thank you.
Yes. Short answer is yes. We've had our first. I used to be a barber. I was in a barber shop, and I talked to a guy for years about assisting us, and he was a very wealthy man. I didn't know it, but I kept talking to him about the program. And finally, he just said, listen, if they did the crime, they should do the time. What you're talking about doing does not work. You're trying to help a whole bunch of criminals. There's no money in that business. How are you going to support or sustain your nonprofit? Where do you get the money from? So he said, you're not going to make it. But he said, maybe you could do some motivational speaking or something. He said, I'm gonna give you some money to try this out. Let's see how it works for you. So he gave me $10,000, and that was our first. I was the first office, and from there he saw us. He's watched us grow from a couple of people to full-time staff, and 2 buildings that we now own. So he saw us progress and grow, but he pushed initially. He, like so many others, said, "There's nothing in this for you." And so, but I couldn't stop it because God had placed it in my heart. If there's no money in it, so what? I got to do it anyway. And so that's where it started. And there's, to this day, sometimes you have people who have a problem with, when you mention the word ex-con, jail, prison.
Right.
I've gone to a church one time, and God didn't want to shake my hand.
Wow.
Didn't want to touch me. So, and I was doing the presentation and worshiping with him and his family, but he could worship on the side of me, but he couldn't shake my hand.
That's
wow. So I've been, you talk about pushback, the kind of business I'm in is not one of glory. Nobody wants to do it. Nobody wants to talk about jail all day, including me. But, I talk about the things that are needed to get us out of jail, not just physically, but in our minds.
Well, you told me a story about early, like when you had first grant that you got, you had people in the neighborhood who came, and tell that story.
Wow. So we had, nobody had any pushback, anything against me or my wife when we had no money.
No one cares when you're broke.
Nobody
cares. Got a problem with you.
I mean, we were on Facebook. We were giving stuff out. We were doing all kinds of stuff. Nobody had a problem with us. And then as soon as we got our first grant, mind you, this is just our first grant, and we had training wheels on that. And I got calls from people that I had served with in the community, activists, men who were older than me, who I thought they were calling to congratulate me. And they were calling. I had one, and I won't mention his name because we're good friends now, and I've forgotten about it. But he said, listen, I deserve that grant. I should get that kind of money. I've been doing this for years. I'm like, okay, what do you want me to do about that? Like, I mean, we did the work. You do the work and you'll get a grant. Like, you have to show yourself, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And anyway, I had talked to, there's some people, they're okay now, but initially from my own community, the people that I see every day, the people I serve with, the people I've served for years and volunteered for years, as soon as we got money, it became a problem they didn't understand. And so we had to show them, start all over again, and show them that we're not here to get over on you. We're not here just for the money. And so now we're in a place where we're trusted. But initially, when we first got money, and it was just our first time, everybody forgot about the work we already did. They want to know, how come I don't have that money? How come I can't get a piece of it? And it was very hurtful. It was very painful.
Do you know the Charles Barkley story? You ever heard that story?
Mm-hmm.
They were talking to Charles Barkley when he had a gambling thing. And they said, "How, Charles, you're being a bad example of how you're gambling." And he said, when I was a poor kid in Alabama, I didn't have anything. Nobody cared about my money. Now that I got these millions, everybody wants to tell me how to spend it.
Yeah, money changes things for sure.
Right?
It really does. It really does.
I should have that money. I didn't realize George got such a big grant. I'm gonna hit him up for some money at the end of this interview.
Oh yeah, exactly.
The fans didn't hear any of that.
That quiet.
No, it's true though. I mean, there are professional grant writers out there that do very well as a profession, and there's also, there's like angel investors and stuff like that, and there's all sorts of ways to get money. I mean, I've had many like top high-end business people say, like, there's always money, don't worry about it. You just got to find it. Now that might be a little generous on their part, but I mean, I understand it.
You don't build an organization like George has without the hustle.
Exactly.
You have to have 100 conversations where you get turned down before you have the person who supports you. And it's easy to be like, oh, they got that state grant. They worked hard to get in position to that. They worked hard to get that. And having a state grant means that they're accountable to every dollar in ways that other organizations are not. Right. And that takes, and it's continual hustle. They don't just renew those things. Right. And it means that you have to be making an impact in the community. We are so proud of George and Legacy. I mean, as a church, like I love to see them. And that's one of the marks of you. If other people's success makes you glad, that's a good mark for your character. If other people's success makes you jealous, maybe you should think about how you're spending your time.
Oh, 100%, absolutely. No, I'm actually glad you said that. I mean, studying philosophy is called virtue ethics, which I always thought was a very attractive sort of like school of moral reasoning, if you will, and that like one of the reasons because it goes deeper. Like you can do we talked about this at lunch the other week. The right and wrong people, and that's one thing, which is fine if that's your thing. But then there's the way of acting and behaving and even thinking and feeling that kind of defines your character, who you are essentially, which I always thought was a better approach because it goes so deep. Go ahead.
David, since we have such a long-term relationship, we know each other for so long, do you think your viewers would enjoy hearing some things about young David that maybe they haven't heard before? Would they like to know some of those stories? Is that some things that your viewers would enjoy?
Well, I mean, I'm trying to think of, okay.
I'm trying to get out of there. I see you trying to get out of there.
I'm thinking of one thing in particular, but that's okay.
Tell the story.
So years ago, like this is before my wife and I had kids. David was living with us. And you called me up one day and you're like, man, you're not as big as I thought you were. I was running short on underwear, so I borrowed a pair of your boxers, which first of all is weird. And you're like, I could barely squeeze into those things. And I was like, what are you talking about? You're like, they have some Greek letters on them. And I said, those aren't my boxers. Those are my wife's pajamas. And by the way, you can keep them now.
That's funny. Yeah, no, I hadn't thought of that.
This is a live recording. You cannot.
Yeah, no, it's out there now. There's nothing I can do.
Just so you know.
That's funny. No, I do.
Just like us. So.
Which is, I like that. I like the qualifier, like, which is weird in the first place. It's like, it is true. Like, you don't borrow somebody else's underwear. It's ridiculous.
Yeah. There's no borrow at that point. You're like, can I have these things?
That's funny. Okay, well, that's good. Yeah, no, we had a lot of fun for sure. I remember just,
now,
a lot of.
Back to the topic. That's
okay. So let's see. Do you have a clothes? Do you have a? Oh, so you have like a clothes drive and stuff like that?
Exactly. Perfect segue. Okay. Yeah. So we do have a community closet, and it helps people who need clothes off the streets. So they come in, and like I once needed assistance, and I had too much pride to ask for help. So when people come in, we don't ask them any questions. We tell them to sign in and just go shopping. We provide hygiene items. Of course, clothing. And listen, we've got some great clothes. I mean, I've had homeless people walk down the street with Gucci on. And so,
nice.
I mean, because, the people who donate to us, they realize, I'm not going to give you something out of my garage. And these are people. Right. And so we've been getting clothes fresh out the cleaners. We've been getting clothes with tags still on them. And so, when they come in, I'll just tell you this real quick. We had a young lady, very young, pretty girl come in. And she's hard times, and I can't even imagine what she's going through on the streets. But she came in, and I had one of the young ladies, a sister, and I found out later that she went into the community closet, thought it was so beautiful, and the clothes were so fresh that she got undressed right there. Said, "I can't have these clothes on me anymore. I just feel dirty." Just took them all off and just dressed right there on the spot with the clothes that we have in our community closet. And so we have some stories of people who are just, their lives are being changed through simple stuff like clothes.
Right.
And so, it's important that we have those things there, those programs there for situations just like that.
The old is gone. Yeah. It was come, right?
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
Take off those things of the old life.
Yeah.
Little scripture right there, David.
No. Yeah, no, I get it. Yeah. Besides people who had been incarcerated, do you help a lot of homeless people or anything like that? Anybody come in and say, "Hey, I don't got a place to stay," and if you give them a place to stay, where do you put them? Where do you give? Right. Where do they send them?
So Waukegan has a huge issue with homelessness.
Yeah.
And so we have a lot of people come off the street. They need some place to stay. Some of them are sleeping in their car, so they just want some clothes to hold them over, some tennis shoes, and so. We've had that happen, and then we have people who come in. I mean, just we call it there's SOs, people who have certain offenses that they can't get housing anywhere. We have a partnership with New Day, who houses people who have those certain offenses, and so we have a lot of people who tend to, you could call them thrown away. Society's thrown them away or put them to the side and say, "We don't want to see you anymore." We help those kinds of people, and if we can, we'll partner with organizations that can assist them as far as clothing, as far as a place to stay if we don't have it.
But housing for men in particular is really difficult. That's something we deal with on a regular basis. And you can find housing often for women who are coming out of an abuse relationship, or even in recovery you can find. But the housing market now is terrible. It's really tough to find affordable places to live. Most of this church is people who are renting and often homeless. We're working with a few families now, but it is a struggle. And to find housing for men, there's overnight stuff. There's pads, and pads does a great job, but it's super limited.
Yeah.
And can be tough to be working and in pads at the same time.
Yes.
It's definitely an issue that needs more attention. I've known a number of people who tried to get after that, and it's very difficult and has a lot of obstacles. I don't know the answer to that question of like, how do we provide short-term housing that's effective, especially when you have people who are SOs in the middle of that and kids in the mix. Gets really challenging. I'd love to hear, I don't know how many politicians or people who, I'd love to hear a common sense solution to that. As a church, we'd love to get behind something that really worked for temporary housing. I just haven't seen it.
Yeah, no, I mean, homelessness is a problem throughout the entire country. And it's like when I lived in Portland, it was and it's gotten worse since I left. But there was homeless people all over the place, and for the most part, it was fine. They just sort of walk around and don't bother you. But I mean, you feel bad for them. I mean, because they, I can imagine not having a shelter.
Well, and they say, the issues of mental health and homelessness are tied together, but like sometimes they're not tied together. Like, oh, because I have a mental health issue, I'm homeless. Sometimes because I'm homeless, I have a mental health issue.
Oh, right? That's actually a very good way to say it.
There's some competition between agencies that sometimes gets in the way. I think you and I had this conversation about there are a handful of cities that have done a really great job with homelessness, mostly because they've laid down their territorialism to say and got to know the homeless by name, and then worked through the homeless folks saying, what's Mary Jane's issue? What's, Jack Smith's issue? And how can we resolve homelessness for them? And I think that kind of work, which takes a bigger tent than either George or I have, but I'd love to see something like that happen around here. To see some agencies go, hey, we're willing to put our dollars and our influence at risk because maybe what we're doing isn't helping, and we're willing to let those resources go somewhere that is helping. Which is, it's tough though. Once you get, once you want to justify your organization, and you hope we're both nonprofits, right? I hope that if we're no longer fulfilling our mission or doing good in our community, that we'd say, we're not going to take up space. We're going to support something that does.
Right.
And maybe there's people who think that already about us. So, right. But
what you said is so true, is that's why partnerships are key. I don't have to do everything, and I can't do everything. I'm not equipped to do everything. And I found that out the hard way. And so people come to us and, listen, I don't have it. I'll be honest with you. If I cannot do it, I probably do know somebody who can, and so we do have people who do housing. We don't do housing, but if you want recovery, you mentioned mental health. There's some issues that have to be dealt with that people deal with those issues. But housing is an animal. It's an animal. And I could tell you, I'm going to refer you probably to PASS, probably to, Salvation Army. I've had to take somebody to a church that opens up. I had to take somebody to the jail.
Mikasa does a really nice job around here.
Yeah.
But it's slow.
It is, especially now, since PASS is basically shut down since COVID. So it's very difficult right now, the housing arena, period.
Yeah. No easy solutions. I have people come and tell me, hey, what do I do about this person I know? And I said, you're probably your best way is to take someone into your house. And no one likes to hear
that itself is tough for somebody to do. A complete stranger off the street. I mean, I can imagine that would be. I don't know if I could. That's weird. But you're right.
That's the thing that when you get to. Here's why this is difficult.
Right.
Like is because there are plenty of places to stay. They're just in people's homes.
Right.
We've talked to. We partner with Global Executive. They have housing, and we partner with Allendale for people who are 18 and up, and I just found out recently, and we've been partnered, that they can house somebody who's 18 to 24 right now and give them a bed, give them a place to stay if they meet certain criteria. We have the Eddie Washington Center, who we're partnered with, and they take men in, but they're gonna do an assessment of whether you have an addiction to alcohol or anything like that. But if you pass that, then you're in. And so I've gotten people beds with that. And so those are just a few places that we know, but again, we're still suffering in that area.
I've heard of people who committed crimes on purpose just to have a place to stay.
Yes.
Oh, I've known of people that did that in Portland. There's just one guy I can think of. He came in and harassed everybody at the bar just so he can get arrested.
Yeah. And look, you can't do everything, but I think everyone can do something.
Yes.
Right. Yeah, everyone can do something in their community. There's a place for you to, at a food pantry, at a clothing closet, at a Legacy, at a church rental, somewhere that you can help people. And I think that should be part of every single person's life, that there's a responsibility of being a human that says, I help other people.
Yeah.
Right.
No, that's
part
good.
of what it is to be a human. And I don't know if I get a little worked up here. Maybe George will disagree with me, but like, I get tired of people who come and criticize us who don't do anything.
Ooh,
who come in and say things like, well, how come you don't do this or that? I'm like, tell me what you're doing.
Right, exactly.
Tell me what I'm sorry. Yeah, tell me what you're doing. Yeah.
I've had that. We had a couple of city council meetings. You're all up in our council meetings. When somebody gets up and says what we're not doing as a unit, like as an agency, you're not doing it, and they don't have an agency, they don't have a nonprofit, they don't have a business. It hurts, because how can you qualify even your criticism when you're not in the field, you're not doing the work? It's easy to see from the bench.
Yeah,
it's easy. It's easy, not even from the bench. It's easy to see from the audience. You know, you're not even in the game, and so that
I had somebody who said, "How can you be so hard on that guy about this situation? He's come back to us over and over again for help, and not doing anything about it to help himself." And I said, "Yeah, you're cut off." And they're like, "How could you be so cruel?" I'm like, "You can go help him. You can go ahead and get involved."
Well,
I was like, feel free.
Well, that's the key, is that we have this thing where I got in our meetings where somebody would bring up something like, we need to do this in the community, we need to do that. I'll just listen to them. And at the end, I say, okay, so what do you plan to do about it?
Yeah.
And that's where people stop short, because when the onus is on you to do something about it, when you're asking me to do something about it, you have a lot of criticism. But when it comes back to, well, what are you going to do about it? Then it stops short. Then it's like,
we get self-righteous by some point in the conversation.
It just sounds
self-righteous.
We just
like, let me tell you anything.
Let me show you just how generous and charitable and humble I really am.
Exactly.
I am so humble
right now what we can't say in public. We get to talk to you.
Most of us are aware of our shortcomings.
Yes.
You go, yeah, we're limited, and you have to accept that. Otherwise, you drive yourself crazy.
I mean, constructive
you can't fix everything.
You can't see yourself. You can't see yourself. You can't edit everything. You need somebody else to edit and to. That's good. I can't see everything I'm doing, but I feel it feels like it comes from a better place, from somebody who's not just making just saying things about you because they don't like the fact that you got a grant or something. I
like the question, what is ours to do? Like, what is ours? And we do that, and we may get involved in other things a little bit, but we do the things that we're called to do, and we try to do those things well and know enough about them and care about the people in them and execute, but we can't do everything. I can't do what George does, right? We can help, we can get on board sometimes. I can show up at something and, be helpful, or probably just be annoying most of the time.
Well, you definitely couldn't grow a beard as cool as his, I'll tell you.
No, stop.
He's got a better beard than me.
I love that beard, man. I love it.
I walked into his office a couple years ago. David's like, "Where's this interview going?" I walked into his office and he goes, "Ladies and gentlemen, the mob boss has arrived." I was like, "Come on, man, we're trying to escape some stereotypes here." Then I started up a gambling pool for his workers.
That's awesome. I love that. So wait, going back a little bit, because that was actually.
There you go. That's it.
Thank you. Yeah, what you said, Gary, actually was fortuitous, because that was going to be my next question. Is, have you had to tell somebody, okay, we're done because you're not doing what we asked? You're not contributing enough, or you're fighting us at every move, or you're doing things. You have a set of right rules. Is like, okay, you can't do drugs. You're not allowed to do drugs. If you find you doing drugs, you're on the or whatever.
If we made that rule, we wouldn't help anybody.
Okay.
The thing I always say is, we can't work harder at helping someone than they're working on it themselves.
Okay.
And I'm like, so the thing I'm talking about is someone who's like, I'm like, hey, I need work. Great. Here's a couple options to pursue, whatever. And then they'll come back, hey, I need money again. I said, well, how'd that go? Mm-hmm. Well, I didn't get around to it. I'm like, hey, man, I need you to be working at this. We're not, I don't have unlimited resources. We're a small church in a poor town. What do you think we have? I'll care about you. I said, but until you got to start working on this, man. And if you're telling me hey, drugs is my main issue, great. We have recovery. Did you show up once? Are you trying? Are you doing, and that's the thing where I go, at some point we go, I'm not going to just keep, most people, it's funny, people, I'll offer things other than money, and they're not that interested. I'll say, you know what you really need is some budgeting help. And I got a guy who'll sit down with you and walk you through a budget. I don't need that. I just need $600. I'm like, no, you need budgeting, because I know your situation. Because you're making $1,500 a month and you got a $900 a month car payment. That's a problem. you know, like, and you're wondering why you can't feed your family. I'm like, maybe turn that car in, and you know, look, you can. Both my boys bought cars for $2,000 that run.
Oh yeah,
they're not pretty,
amazing.
but you can do it.
Right.
Right? They're not fancy, you know. Sometimes you got to use your feet to make them go. But
like the Flintstones, yeah.
But that's, you have to have that kind of standard. Otherwise, you'll wear your own people out too.
Yeah.
And I want to be a good steward of the resources that we have. People give to us to give to others.
Yes.
Right.
You know, and the first time we're going to say yes to everybody first time.
Sure.
But then you got to show that you're working on it. And if you're working on it, man, I'll go to bat for you over and over and over and over and over again. Absolutely. Absolutely. If you're working on it. But it's more of an art than a science, though. You know, of like figuring that out. Like,
sure.
Okay, what's going on here? If you got a drug problem, just tell us.
Right.
Like, let's deal with it.
Right.
Yeah. I don't. How do you deal with that?
I can't. You know, I can only say ditto, because I mean, you said the best way. We had people. I had people come in to say, listen. I mean, not even introduce themselves, not even say their name. I want a job, or I need some money right now. Man, just take me, get something to eat. I need some money. Or even not even go take me something to eat. Give me some money. And I would tell them, this is not the organization for you. Because Legacy is about you getting on your feet. So then once you get on your feet, you help somebody else. If you just want to get on your feet and go do your thing, that's not Legacy. That's not passing it down. We're not interested in that. I used to deal with them that harshly. Like, no, now I see as people come in, and with so many experiences that we have, I'm like you. We just want to gauge. We just want to gauge your progress. Yeah. We just want to see that you want it just as bad as we want it for you. And like you, if they're willing to go to bat for themselves, we're willing to go back to go to bat for you. We've had problems where, you know, we've probably put more into it than the individual.
Yep.
And we suffer for it. We got hit hard. We've lost relationships with employers because we put more into it than they did. But every now and then, you have that person that comes up through the ranks. They start their own business. They got a vehicle. Some of them have partnered together to get a vehicle together. We've seen amazing miracles happen. And so we're encouraged that there's some people who want it. And if there's somebody who doesn't, we weed them out. And, you know, usually you find out fairly quickly.
Right. Very interesting. Very interesting. So let's. You said earlier about like what's a different story when children are involved. I remember in Portland when I first got there, I volunteered at I think it was Pat's, because it's Pat's the one where it goes from church to church to church. Okay, so it was that, but it was a family homeless shelter. In the basement of a furnished basement of a Catholic church, Ascension Church, which was run by monks and nuns, which I thought was so cool. Like, how often do you see monks and nuns running around? I don't know, it was just cool. But
you love monks.
But yeah, huh?
You love monks. You always have.
I live a very monkish lifestyle. I remember my first reaction when I first saw children come, you know, into the room. I was like, oh man, you know, like it just like tugs on your heartstrings even, you know, harder than it would be, you know, for adults. And I remember talking, and you're also talking about the difference between like, you know, being homeless because you're mentally ill, or, you know, you become mentally ill because you're homeless. Not everybody becomes homeless because they're mentally ill. I remember talking to one guy, father, and I said, do you mind if I just ask you what happened? And he said, I just made a series of bad financial decisions. And he's like I lost stuff. I lost the house. I, blah, blah, blah. And so here I am. And I was like, wow. Like, you know, it just made me put in perspective, like how so many people, I think they estimate like over 75% of people in this country, like, are living paycheck to paycheck. Like, you're 2 pay periods away from being homeless if you screw up, you know, rightly, if you will. And it just really put a lot of it into perspective, and just the different, like how vulnerable the children are, and they have to go wherever the parents go. I mean, it was a wonderful setting, and we had a kitchen, and we fed them. I remember with the 2000 debates with Al Gore and George Bush, and me and one of the kids were sitting there watching it and making fun of Bush and everything. But he ended up winning. It was just a very interesting experience compared to, like, through the same church, I volunteered at a food pantry, and it was people would like get in there and like start fighting over, like, you know, Cheerios box and stuff. Like, I mean, it was just ridiculous. I mean, it was just, we're giving you free food, and you're feeling entitled to something that somebody else grabbed. You know, it was a very different dynamic. Anything you want to speak to that at all? That's just my own personal testimony.
I mean, I think it's like a lot of things, right? There's all kinds of people who are homeless. There's people who are kind and generous and want better, and there's people who are jerks who are homeless, right? And I think it brings out, you know, I've some of the homeless people I've met or poor people are as generous of people as you'd ever meet,
Right.
you know. And some people, it doesn't matter what they have, they're selfish and mean, and
Right.
and I think sometimes hard circumstances bring out the real you,
Sure.
you know. And so if when you lose a job or you end up homeless and you're a kind person who loves God, that it doesn't shake you the same way, and you'll go through that with a certain attitude. And when you're not, you know, and you blame everybody for everything that's ever happened and whatever, and you go through that, it brings out some of that worst stuff as well. I would rather, in, you know, we'll try to hold some standards in here. We run a community closet that serves about 10,000 people a year: clothes, shoes, diapers,
Wow.
back to school supplies, winter coats.
Fabulous.
Probably our favorite thing we do as a church, right? And once in a while, you get people in there who will come in just mean. And our team has taken the approach of, we're going to talk to you about, here's how we act when we're here. And if you can act like this, then you're welcome as part of our community. And if you can't, then you're not welcome here. And surprisingly to me, more people who've had that hard talk will change. I've been surprised by that. Some people just don't come back. We've had a handful of people. There's one lady in particular who was just like, it was caring and loving for her to speak to her that way. She needed someone to say that to her. To
Tough
say,
love,
no,
yeah.
you can't come in today because of how you treated people who are here.
Right.
And you're welcome back if you can come back with a different attitude. And we'll pray for people, all that. And I'm like, we're willing to interact with you, but you can't come in here and treat people like this. And I think that, you know, scripture talks about speaking the truth in love. And I was really proud of our team that day. And that's somehow we've handled those things here. And also we've gotten burned 1,000 times. I'm sure George can tell you, there's a lot of times that we've invested in someone who turned and crapped on us. Or someone who beat up, basically like took advantage of a volunteer or took advantage of us. And we'd rather get taken advantage of than turn people away. That's
Sure.
kind of, that's a value for us, but we try to protect the culture here, and we're doing no one any favors to just let them be mean to people or run over them, because that may be part of why they don't have a social network either. Why won't your sister take you in? Because you're terrible. You know, like, I hate to say that, but it's true.
No,
like,
I understand.
No, and just to add to that, you know, because we have partnered with Gary, we brought in our people, our clients, just to get to his closet, because he's got clothing and he's had toys, food out for everybody. And we've had a situation where we had the parents and the young people. And for us, the hardest part is sometimes the parents, to your point, what you said earlier, the children sometimes suffer because of the parents.
Yeah.
You know, and it's hard because we're big on mentorship, and we'll be mentoring our youth, mentoring the young people. We'll be exposing them to toys and clothes and all this good stuff. And then they got to go home.
Yeah.
And it's hard because you put that much into it. And we've seen it. We've seen it where, you know, they don't even want to go home sometimes, or they have to go home after we had such a great session, or you drop somebody off. I've dropped some kids off personally, a kid one time in Zion, and I watched them walk into one of the most abusive situations right there on the porch. There was drugs, there was everything going on. There was fighting. I'm like, what the heck? And I'm looking at what they just came out of and what they have to go home to.
Yeah.
And so to your point, it's a sad thing when we see we can only do so much. And,
I remember, I mean, I had to come to this point where saying I can't help kids by helping their parents if their parents won't receive it. We even went so far as I had a family come live in my house. I had 4 kids. They lived in our house for 6 months. And I just couldn't, this guy was so toxic and terrible. And I kept saying, well, the kids. And I just couldn't get past him to help the children. We gave him a place to live for 6 months. Right. But it was, and honestly, the only way that came out of that was investing in his ex-wife, who ended up, we helped her get a house. And then the kids went there. But I was like, we couldn't get past this guy. It was, but I think of that as being one of our biggest bad investments. It was a ton of time, energy, money, emotion. And it, at least for this guy, ended up at this point, we like to say that story's not over. At this point, feels like a 0, you know.
Right.
And I gave my best to it, and it was
That's
rough on my family.
Yeah.
You know, all this stuff gets personal. It's not,
Sure.
you know, George and I don't do these kind of jobs because we're getting rich doing them. You know,
No.
But it comes up gets up in your business, right? And you have to balance that stuff with your own family too. Like, yeah.
Sure. Oh, absolutely. You got that many people living in your house. I mean, that's a very
We were
intimate
trying to
type
sell our
situation.
house at the time. I think my wife was going to kill me. You know how kind my wife is. But we
Yes.
had 8 kids in the house, plus this guy and the 2 of us, and then we'd have to try to get the house ready to sell, which never sold.
Oh,
But
wow.
it was terrible. My wife almost strangled me. So
I understand.
thank God, it's the hair.
It's really what keeps it together, isn't it? Finds the whole relationship
Yes.
is your hair. What about like legal forces, or like, do you get any pushback or difficulties or support from the police, local judges, anything like that? Do you get any condemnation or again praise? Maybe cops can be really funny about stuff.
Yeah.
To put it nicely.
You would think the line of work that we're in, as far as what formerly incarcerated people, impacted people, that law enforcement would stay clear away from us, but that's not the case. You know, State's Attorney Eric Reinhardt came.
I know Eric. Yeah.
He came to our gang summit.
Nice.
And you know, and Judge Reginald Matthews, you know, came to our gang summit, and there were some people that had some pushback on that, like, you know, they shouldn't be here. And you know, and there were some people involved in criminal activity, and I had one guy. I'll just say it starts with an N. His name is Nick. Well, I'll just say his name. Nick. Just mess it up. But the young guy.
I don't want to say his name. I'll just say a name that rhymes with it.
You'll be okay. So he's like, you know, he's had like 13 felonies before 18.
Wow.
He's like one of those guys that never had good engagement with law enforcement. And so he's like talking to me like, that's the state's attorney. Like, yeah, go talk to him. Like, man, I'm not talking to him in front of you. I'm not talking to him. Like, and somehow he made his way over to us, and I had turned off, and he ended up talking to Nick and saying some things to him. And one of the things he told me later that he said was, man, I'm not trying to prosecute you. I'm not trying to prosecute you. I'm trying to help you. I'm working with Legacy to get you guys some help, you know? And so anyway, that was a good, and I talked to him later and he said, man, he's all right. He's cool. You know, he's all right. And that all right may mean the difference between him having a negative interaction with a law enforcement officer next time he does, or a more positive one because he understands this person is a human being just like I am. And so we've had dozens of cases where I've had the chief of Zion, Waukegan, they'll call me and say, what do you got? I'm on the scene. We had somebody get shot. It was a law enforcement involved shooting. And we're there on the scene while people are getting ready to throw rocks at the police. We're there, you know, talk to the families. The one recently in Zion, we talked to the family before it got to the Channel 7 News. They showed them the video. They didn't want to come. We talked to them, said, come see the police, talk to them. They showed them the video. And before there was a big riot, they saw what the truth was. And so we have a lot of interaction with the police. We're not afraid to say that. There's some gangs that we know that are individuals that might not want to be involved with us because we don't have that kind of problem because they know we don't have a snitch thing going on here.
Right.
We're blind to that. We just work with trying to bridge the gap, so to speak. So to answer your question, I believe we have a very, from what I've seen, law enforcement loves the work that we do. They appreciate it, and we support them in the work that they do. Anything that you're doing right, I support you. If you're doing it wrong, I don't care who you are, I don't support you. But they are doing the ones that are doing their job as we are. We're working good together and trying to get some help to some people.
That's awesome. Well, that's great. That sounds very positive. Yeah, I would have expected a little bit of like, you know, like, oh, there's a couple of cops who like, you know we're dealing with gangbangers or whatever else, and so they come and harass us or something. But if not, that's fabulous.
Wow.
That was
cop's just bored, just looking to bother George.
No,
Well, I mean, it's just, the climate of police. Okay, we won't talk about policing.
No.
So,
No. Let me keep it real with you. We've had there's no escaping the fact about the legal system. You know about the criminal legal system. I'll call it the criminal justice system because they don't do justice. You know the system. You know that we've dealt with, just like you have some bad police officers, you have bad politicians, you have bad people that work in schools, bad teachers. But we don't stop going to school. We don't stop, electing officials because we have one or two bad apples. And so, yes, believe me, I've run into them. I've run into some bad apples. I've had personal experiences with having a gun to my from law enforcement. I've had all kinds of stuff happen to me, but I've learned to forgive. And I think that's one of the elements that's missing in society. That's why we're so quick to kill each other. And so I've learned to forgive. And there are some people, I'm not going to hold you to the same standard. Maybe somebody else did this to me. I'm not going to believe, I'm not just going to just prejudge you and say, because this person was in uniform, you're going to do me the same way. And so I would hope that I could receive that same mercy, that just because I have some camouflage on and I'm a black man with a beard, that you don't think I want to rob you or kill you. And so that's that, we're having real talk. And so that's what we want to reciprocate that. I don't judge you in that way. Don't judge me in that way.
well, okay. Well, that's good. Again, that's positive, yeah, we can chat about policing another time, but because there's also, we have more people incarcerated in this country than any other country in the world.
Any other
per
country
capita, which means it's proportionate to population size.
Yes.
We have like over 2.1 million people. The second in line is Brazil with 800,000. Like nobody's got anything on us.
Yes.
A lot of it's people think it's because of the ridiculous war on drugs and stuff like that, which is racially underpinned for sure. That all started because marijuana is a Mexican term, and jazz musicians back in the day, and the migrants were coming in, and of course the white working or the white upper class wasn't having it. So there's all sorts of racial issues going on here too. Do you have to deal with any of that, like explicitly? Any conflicts of race, any sort of racial problems or anything like that?
Yeah. First of all, David, I like you because you know what you're talking about. But I had a sign. We just changed it. Where we're about to change. It's still up. I have two signs up in front of our buildings. One of them has the word nigger on it.
What? That's the slur you were talking about earlier?
Yes.
Okay, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
So it's still there. And so, I tell the people all the time, and I remind them that it's still there for a reason, and we're not taking it down because I think I said it before that, I don't know if I was talking to you, but I said that basically I want them to see what these kind of people do. If you think that's who we are, then I want you to see all the people walking in and out daily, not just on a certain day of the week, every day receiving services, walking in, feeling sad, walking out with a smile on their face. I want you to see that. Since that's what you wrote on the side, I want you to see, well, that's what these kind of people do then.
Wow.
And so, we have not moved it. We have not taken it down. We're about to get some new signs. And that's just because it's the season to do it. But for a year now, I've left it up because whoever wrote that with the ER, not with an A, with a hard ER on the end of it, whoever wrote that apparently does not know me or the people that work at Legacy or what we do. And so I just wanted them to continually see what happens here. And hopefully you'll notice, we didn't take it down. If that's what you believe, then this is what these kind of people do.
Wow. So you don't know who did it, or do you have any vague understanding of who did it?
No, we got a pretty good security system. And for some reason it missed that. And maybe it's for the best. Because on sometimes I'm human too. And if I knew who it was, I might call the mob boss and say, listen, we got work to do here.
What?
No, I understand.
No,
I would
I'm joking.
I think I would be.
Knows that it was a Green Party member is all I know.
Is it in green? We only use green spray paint, so if it's any other color, it might have been the libertarians.
The environment spray paint, David.
That's right.
They actually grew it out of vines and then.
That's right. There's a new line coming out made of bamboo. Yeah, right.
It's not. Listen, I have no parts of this. I don't listen. That's not my words. I'm sorry.
No, it's just. I mean, that's just awful. I can't stand that stuff. It's just disgusting.
I think we were talking about this a little bit earlier. I think for me, understanding that especially black men are living in a different country than I am, and I remember. We were talking about this before. It was a book that I read by a guy named Jamar Tisby, and it inspired me. And there's a number of black men in the church, and I just said, "Hey, can you tell me a driving while black story?" And every single black man I knew could tell me at least one, and usually multiple driving while black stories. And I was like, man. Yeah. And then you see the disparity, right? There's a story I tell for comic effect about getting caught without I didn't have a driver's license. I didn't have car insurance. I didn't have registration. And a cop in South Dakota said, "Get out of my town and never come back." And I usually end that story with, "And I've never been back to Beulah, South Dakota." Right. But if I'm a black person telling that story, it ends with, "And then I spent a year in prison in Beulah, South Dakota."
Yes.
Right. And you're like, why? What's the disparity about who's in jail? Like, it's not that there's people who commit crimes and people who don't. There's people who get locked up for crimes and people who don't.
Right. Exactly. And that's how I always put judicial system in air quotes. Go ahead.
Yeah. My son said the other day, and look, and my dad grew up in a world where Italians got arrested more frequently. Yeah. That's not true anymore. Right. Right. And I'm like, but I understand that I have not received the punishment for things that I've done. Right. And then how can I then judge someone who had done the same things I did, but because they're viewed differently, they got locked up. And then they have to live with that. Right. I had a friend who lived with us years ago who is a terrible criminal. He has a Green Party show right now, and he's done awful things. But
I got away with it all.
What's that?
I got away with all of it.
I know. I'll be putting them on my blog later.
I don't think wearing your wife's pajama bottoms counts as a crime, but maybe a moral crime. But
please never say that again.
Okay. Okay. Fair enough. Well, we're about at the end here. Do you guys want to plug anything or anything else you want to say? We were literally that's been an hour. It's crazy.
I do want to plug something. There's a great church out here called New Hope Christian Community Church. And they support ministry like the ministry we've been doing. We've been able to do what we do because of them. They're in Round Lake. Is it the best beach?
Round Lake Heights.
Round Lake Heights.
The top 5 of the Round Lakes.
The top 5 boroughs of the. So okay.
Hey,
they have a community closet that's 10 times bigger.
If you are someone who needs or know someone who needs clothes, shoes, toys, we do free diapers. You need winter coats for your kids, back to school supplies. We would love to help you. You can stop by any Sunday. You can come shop. Every other Wednesday is open, or you can just call and make an appointment. We'd love to have you. But also, Legacy Reentry Foundation in Waukegan does a magnificent job. If you're someone who's got prison in your background, you've had a hard time getting going, or someone is in that position, get them hooked up with George and Regina over there at Legacy. Go see our man Smiley,
Oscar Barham. We're right across the street from the Waukegan Police Department. That's the easiest way to find us. 420 Clayton. www.legacyreentryfoundation.org. 1-800-573-8538. If you need us, we're there for you.
And George and I have a movie coming out soon.
We do. October, Friday. He doesn't know. I'm going to tell you how God works.
It's Rush Hour 4.
Listen. He doesn't even know. We have an actual real documentary coming out.
I know that.
October, Friday the 13th.
That's a good day.
Are you for real? Is this true? Is this real?
This is real.
Yeah.
We're changing the narrative on what's scary. Listen, October, Friday, all jokes aside, October, Friday the 13th. It's called From Lockup to Legacy. It's going to be at CLC in Grays Lake, College of Lake County in Grays Lake. Please contact. It's going to be at the A-Room Theater. It is awesome. Holds a great amount of people. We're going to pack the house. And it's basically a documentary. It's called, the subtitle is The Story of Relentless Hope. Story of Relentless Hope. I'm telling you, you got to be there. Bring somebody that needs just a push because they're going to see a lifestyle, not just words, but a lifestyle that has changed. And I think they'll be inspired by it. So that's Friday the 13th, October 13th. Listen, you can go to the website and find out more information.
That's awesome.
Joe.
That's fantastic. Friday the 13th.
He almost started
That's
preaching right there. We could have passed the basket.
well, that's great. Okay, so COC Friday the 13th, studio or what is it called? Room A.
What is it?